Zooming in now on the warming ties between Israel and Bahrain. As we reported right here earlier on the show, an official from Bahrain, a country with no official diplomatic relationship with Israel, has told I-24 News exclusively that the Jewish state is not Bahrain's enemy and that his country would be the first, he believes, to form ties with Israel in the Gulf.
Now, this comes as an Israeli diplomatic team is getting ready to attend the meeting there this weekend of UNESCO's World Heritage Committee. Well, joining us now in the studio for more on this is Dr. Nachum Shiloh. He's an expert on the Gulf states at Tel Aviv University's Moshe Dayan Center. Dr. Shiloh, I mean, the obvious question, why Bahrain, why now?
Well, I think that we're looking on a wider issue, and the wider issue is Saudi Arabia. As we know, Bahrain is under the tutelage of Saudi Arabia. It's a small country controlled by Saudi decision-making, and it is possible that the Saudis are trying to pull something and to make a little test about to see the reactions in the...
Dip their feet in the water, so to speak, yes, before they do it themselves?
Yes.
Interesting.
It's one possible issue. The other thing is Bahraini interest of a joint enemy. We have Israel and Bahrain as a joint enemy, which is Iran. Bahrain is very worried about Iranian ambitions in the Gulf and in Bahrain exclusively.
I want to go back for a moment to Saudi Arabia because obviously that is the significant player in the Gulf and really in a much bigger scale. Do you think that any of the changes, any of the warming of ties that we're seeing or the statement that we heard exclusively from that official could happen without the kingdom's blessing?
No.
All right, so Saudi Arabia is saying yes to all of it.
Either saying yes or not objecting. I believe that they have said yes.
If it goes well, what do you think it would take for Saudi Arabia itself to take a little bit of a step further with Israel?
Well, regarding the Saudi issue, we have still an obstacle, which is the Israeli response or lack of response to the Saudi peace initiative, which the Saudi put as a condition to move forward with diplomatic relations, saying that unless Israel express its willingness to accept the deal or to accept the peace initiative, Saudi Arabia will not develop any diplomatic ties with Israel. But if we can judge according to what Mohammed bin Salman is doing since he came to power as the crown prince, we can see that is actually shrinking this condition. With all the deteriorating relations between Saudi Arabia and the Palestinians, it can be said that this condition is not, let's say, is not so decisive as it used to be, but it still exists. So we have to see how the parties will get over this condition or how they can bypass it.
Dr. Shiloh, it seems like about 1,000 years ago now, but it really was more like 20 years ago. Israel, following the Oslo Accords, did have contacts, relations with some of the Gulf states, not full diplomatic relations. There was some commercial interests office. Is this something along the lines you think we're going to see with Bahrain? They're going to start with gestures like we're seeing this weekend with UNESCO, maybe a commercial section before they go to full ties?
It is very possible that they will not jump straight to full diplomatic relationship. However, we have to remember that the politics in the Gulf, especially in Saudi Arabia, which is the patron of Bahrain, is changing. Mohammed bin Salman does not act like his predecessors. He acts decisively. He takes steps and measures in the foreign and domestic policy.
He's a young man in a hurry, it seems.
He's a young man in a hurry, and he has his own agenda. His own agenda says that Saudi Arabia should not talk in hints, but speak directly. And maybe this atmosphere will affect the issue of improving relations with the Gulf state, like doing straight moves and not, let's say, partial moves or hidden moves.
Let's talk practically for a moment. Bahrain and Israel, if we're talking just about that relationship, which, as you say, is sanctioned by Saudi Arabia, if they do take even a step further, normalizing ties, what might that look like in reality? Does that mean political cooperation, cooperation together against Iran, economic cooperation?
According to the several reports, many reports in the, let's say, in the passing decade, Israel and Bahrain already had they have relations. If we take, let's say, the WikiLeaks reports about intelligence cooperation against Iran, and so the relations exist according to these publications.
But if it went public, how much further could it go?
Well, it depends how the. I believe that it depends how the Bahraini street reacts, because we remember that in Bahrain we have 70% of the populations are from the citizens are Shia.
And we did see riots in the streets that were suppressed with the help of Saudi Arabia during the Arab Spring there.
Yes, beginning from 2011 we see demonstrations curbed by the Bahraini forces and which were backed by Saudi Arabia. And let's say an opening of an Israeli diplomatic delegation or the embassy or a consulate in Manama, it will be very challenging for the ruling family. We have to take, for example, the declarations, the official declarations made by the El Wifaq party, the Shiite party. A few days ago, one of their senior religious scholars, Muhammad Khojaste, said that establishing diplomatic relations upon normalization with Israel is a betrayal of Islamic values.
That brings up an important question that you talk about, which is the public reaction. In kingdoms like this is not even a dictatorship, it's certainly not a democracy. How much does the public sentiment count? How much are these governments, these kingdoms, afraid of the reaction in the streets?
Well, it counts, because when the masses go to the streets, as we have seen in the Arab Spring, sometimes the authorities just cannot control the situation, and they are afraid that a demonstration of a few hundreds will become a demonstration of tens of thousands, backed by militants. So the public opinion in Bahrain, although it's not a democracy, it counts, and the regime, the Al Khalifa regime, does everything possible to contain it for the time being.
Well, certainly all of those regimes have seen their neighbors and what has happened, again, with the so-called Arab Spring. I'm sure they don't want to see that happening. So change is gradual, but it does seem that it is certainly happening. Dr. Nachum Shiloh.